Welcome back, everyone. I am excited to introduce you to a very special guest, a fellow Canadian who's now living in the US, Vanessa Petronelli. She is on a mission to help people fully embrace their unique gifts and share their divine purpose with the world. She is a mentor to high-profile conscious business executives, entrepreneurs, and celebrities to help them achieve grounded strategic results-based transformations and taking their impact, fulfillment, and success to the next level. She is also the creator of the Embodied Alignment System, which provides tools, processes, and daily practices to help clients experience deeper clarity, intuition, self-awareness, momentum, and more. So she has been featured on GMA, KTLA, Collective Evolution, Authority Magazine, Access Hollywood, and so many more things. Actually, see, we're sharing a lot of these things. That's funny, the media stuff. She was a former, well, I guess you're still a certified yoga instructor. You're just not really doing it, sounds like. And a member of the all-female pop group Savvy Cafe. Oh my goodness. That's amazing. And so much more. I want you to connect with Vanessa after this, and we're going to share with you how you can do that. She also, as I mentioned, lives in the US. She's in San Diego with her husband and adorable rescue dogs, Leo and Chloe. So, Vanessa, we were catching up before the show. We probably should have been recording it because we were getting all fired up about the silly business in the world.
Yeah.
But before we do that, part of why we're connecting, and I share this with you, is because you're very awake to what's going on in the world and who runs the world and what's truth and what's not truth. And as much as we can know that, of course, because we know there's still a lot that's hidden. So I think it would be helpful for everyone to hear a little bit about your journey and how you got to this place where you are awake to what's going on. How did it all start for you?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thanks for having me on. It's exciting to be here with you, and I love that we're having this conversation. Such a perfect time. So I'm from Canada originally. I grew up in Markham, Ontario, just outside of Toronto. Only child, middle class background, very blessed life, very blessed. But I knew from the time I was a kid that there was something really, really off about this planet and humanity. Like, my bullshit detector was up from the time I was a young age, and I was always very intuitive. So, growing up, I had a real fascination with UFOs and aliens and metaphysical stuff, really connect. Like, I would look out the window a lot and I would say, take me home from here. I don't want to be here. I remember doing this all the time. So my foundation, I grew up Catholic, but behind closed doors, I was this spiritual spiritual gangster, I guess, like the clothing line. I love that. I'm like, oh, I feel like that was totally my path, even as a kid. Like, I just really kept my spirituality, like my true depth of like what I knew as truth within my own being, my intuition, the things that I picked up, the things I was feeling about the world, to myself. And it wasn't until I was around 19, I was questioning things. In my teenage years, I would question a lot, like why was society the way it was? But for the most part, I was a good student, honor roll, prom queen, like all the things that you would love to experience as a teenager. I had that. I was very fortunate to have that. And I was also in the entertainment industry at 14. And I'll come back to that in a moment, but it was around 19 where I first got exposed to some material that started to really honor the curiosities and a lot of the questioning that I had around, why do people go to work 5 days a week and have 2 days off? Like, if you're so miserable with life, like, why do you all abide by this? And I remember taking the GO train in a lot because I would have to come into the city for auditions and for work and, jobs I was booking in the industry. And everyone just looked like robots walking around miserable. Like, I could feel the energy of like, and I'm thinking to myself, everyone's just going about their lives. Why are people not, there's no life force. There's no energy that really feels like this is a joyful day. Like, what is it about our society that just goes along with this. And so at 14, I had a message from God. So I started to hear through clairaudience. I was always very clairsentient, but through clairaudience, I heard, you're going to go into the entertainment industry and you're going to make a positive difference. You're going to help a lot of people doing that. So it was like a first kind of entryway to my mission kicked in at around 14. I mean, it's been piecing together for about 3 decades, mind you, if not more than that, of how all these pieces come together. But I followed that voice, and it was that voice of God for me, the divine intelligence that really started to govern my life and really led me from one thing to the next thing to the next thing. And all these synchronicities would happen. And so I had a really fascinating journey, and I did dive into the world, the third dimensional plane. I did for many years, from 14 to 24. I mean, I had a lot of fun. I experienced a lot of wonderful things. I modeled, I was an actress, I was a pop singer, I did solo work. And my dream was always to come to LA at 24. I always knew when I was a little girl, I was supposed to end up in the States. I just had this knowing that I was supposed to be there. Very strong connection to the West Coast, specifically California. And, you know, I stuck to that dream. It didn't happen. I had a lot of divine intervention. And through that were a lot of my series of initial awakenings in my like late teens and early 20s. And, you know, from a lot of the questioning, I started to get David Icke's work into my reality in very similar ways. I started to do a lot of research on disclosure and material that at the time was kind of difficult to find. And in that, I started to also do a lot of personal and deeper transformational work on myself, because what was happening was the longer I was in the entertainment industry doing this work, I started to feel like it was the further and further away from the original intent of me being in the industry. Everything just felt fluffy. It felt superficial. It felt like there was no true depth. And for me, I knew, even if I hadn't discovered it consciously, it was like, I'm here for a reason. And I need to really fulfill that purpose. I need to fulfill that mission in this lifetime. So on the brink of me going to LA to meet with agents at 23, 24-ish, um, I got a really awful viral infection on my face. I had impetigo. I had all these fever blisters inside my mouth, all over my lips. I could barely swallow water. My glands were so swollen. And I was bedridden for 3 weeks. And I knew that that was God saying, you're not going. It's not time for you to go yet. And knowing what I know about Hollywood and a lot of the research I've done over the years, it's very clear why there was such specific divine intervention around that, because I don't know what would have potentially happened to me had I come to LA, this naive young woman in her early 20s from Canada, looking to become a star, you know, and become an actress who is involved in positive projects that make a difference in the world. I mean, that was really the pure loving intention that I had, was to really help people to wake up and to, you know, tell stories that would inspire people and bring back hope and invigorate the populations to, you know, be their best selves and to allow art to do that. But, you know, the universe had other plans. And so it was during that time period where I went through another initiation where a lot of my gifts came online. It was actually through a relationship with a partner who was unfaithful and lying to me for over 2 years. And that was my psychic training. It was learning how to trust my gifts, learning how to be a bullshit detector in a very specific way. And even when my partner, who was a wonderful con artist, and I will call him that, would lie about where he was and what he was doing, and his family would kind of cover up these things too, I knew inside of me that there was something really wrong about this. 2.5 years for me to put the entire puzzle together, but I put it together and I knew I wasn't crazy. So this is also why I know, and I stand very, very deeply in my truth, because that incredible experience, and I'm so grateful to him, con artist and all, you know, the pain that I went through in those years, I bless him, because he was really the catalyst for me to learn how to trust myself and my gifts and the guidance that would come through to me in an intuitive way, in a way that could not be necessarily discovered initially through the five senses and through this third dimensional world. And it was remarkable. I mean, the story in and of itself is probably worth a whole podcast. But I won't go into all of the details, but I will say this, it really awakened me into the work that I've been doing. And I had my college education, my university degree, and went and did a post-grad with coaching and more of the formal type of certification of all that stuff. And then I started my business 12 and a half years ago. And again, it was like another initiation. People in Canada, I remember teaching yoga and people thought it was the workings of the devil, like, thinking that yoga, there was something wrong with that. And, I looked at the initial phase of me doing the coaching and the healing work and the psychic work that I was doing at the time, the channeling work, as a means to help empower people to get back to the truth of who they are, to reconnect to that essence, to reconnect to who they really are, minus all of this conditioning and programming that they have, just completely accepted, mostly unconsciously, sometimes consciously, that dictates who they are in this world. And so I worked with all kinds of people from all walks of life. And I utilized my yoga classes as an opportunity and a tool to empower people in there. And I got a lot of clients from that. But I mean, people at the beginning of my work were like, who the heck's going to pay for coaching? And who the heck's going to pay for energy healing? I did readings for a little while. That didn't feel aligned. And then slowly but surely it just grew. And I really stuck by the voice within me of God saying, like, if you're going to build it, they're going to come, Vanessa, like, just stay with it, stick with it. And so 7 years in, I went fully online and met my husband, and my husband's American, and then ended up immigrating to the States over 6 years ago. I had my dream come true of living in California. I live in San Diego now, and I do a lot of energy work, all of that. And so my work is really been fundamentally about trusting myself and who I am. And so how I see the world, I mean, I'll be honest with you, I researched this stuff many years ago. I didn't talk about it publicly. People who were in the know around this sort of stuff, we would have these discussions. So when this happened, initially, I would say for the first few weeks, I was kind of like, oh, what the hell's happening? Is this for real or not? And then it was like, by April, I was like, there's something really not right about this. There's something really off about this. Oh, this is bullshit. Like, we are really, I believe that there's a virus, but I believe that the reasoning behind it, the setup behind it, has been a very, very strategized plan. And it makes a lot of sense with a lot of the things that I had researched when I was younger, but also just trusting my internal guidance and my knowing. In every fiber of my being, I knew that what we were being told was not the truth.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a hard one for people to get, so anyways, that's my story. That's kind of the initial phase of how I got to where I am.
Well, it's a great story. And I think we probably will have to do a separate podcast on the relationship because it sounds like a whole juicy story. But
oh, yes.
just to tack on to what you shared there about, the truth, right? And I actually would say it is easy because truth has a frequency.
Thank you. Yes.
It just does. There was so many inconvenient truths that the majority of us had to uncover last year. There was nothing convenient about waking up and realizing the world is literally inverted. All the things we thought it was, it isn't. And not to say that there aren't good things. I've met amazing people because of this. Mm-hmm. I've had great spiritual growth because of this. I've really gotten in tune with my purpose even more. I thought I was already in tune with it. I really sunk into my mission. My business doubled, and my business was already doing amazing, and it doubled. And there's a lot of great things that happened. But I guess that's kind of the starting place too, right? Because you and I were talking before we started recording, like you and I were both exposed to the same amount of fluoride in our toothpaste and our water, the same propaganda machines, the same codes, the same symbols, the same frequencies coming through the music, the same indoctrination system. And somehow we're able to still smell the bullshit. And somehow we're able to still feel the texture of truth. And I believe that a lot of folks actually do feel the texture of it, but they're not willing to be inconvenienced by what's going to happen when they lean into what they do know is wrong. Like in Canada, and you and I were talking about this, we've extended our stay-at-home order, or sorry, we've extended the emergencies order until December 2021, which grants them the opportunity to make whatever changes. And they'll let us out a little bit, and then they'll pull, just as they've been doing now for quite some time. And the same will be true in other countries where legally you can't vaccinate people unless it's an emergency, right? So because they literally want all Canadians, they've been saying that from the beginning, vaccinated, but they definitely want 80% vaccinated by the end of 2021. They have to maintain the emergency order to legally allow for that many things to happen.
Right.
And of course, you and I are onto that, and most people are onto that. And then there's a small percentage of people that are either buying into the propaganda, or they actually just don't like the fact that the rest of us aren't complying. They're so conditioned to be good people and what it means to be a good person that they're actually just, they're not angry about the mask. They're angry about the disobedience, for example.
Right. Right.
Mm-hmm. How come I have to obey and you don't? Mommy and daddy told us that, you know, this was the bedtime and you're not going to bed at the time you were told, and it doesn't hurt anyone, but
yes,
that kind of a vibe.
Yeah.
So what's your sense of why? I mean, a lot of us are waking up for sure. What's your sense of why, like, how did we get here?
Yeah, I mean,
question, but
it's a big question. And I mean, even just to talk about the rule followers, I mean, those are survival patterns. There are some people who have their nervous systems completely entrained to be rule followers, and that's how they feel safe, and that's how they feel in control. And I think we have a lot of people who have hijacked amygdalas in their brains right now, who are clinging and attaching to the reality that they've been told their entire lives. And it feels inconvenient to know the truth because it shatters their entire reality. And I think for people like us, it's like we've kind of been hip to the game for a long time. You know, we've people who are more awake, you know, and understand and can see through what's happening. It's like we almost, I feel like there's just a need for going back maybe in a time in our own lives, or just even having an imagination around what it could be like to imagine that you have no access your entire life to knowing this. Maybe on a soul level, they're not meant to, right? They're the role that they're meant to play is not to know. Maybe they go to another planet, or they incarnate at another time where they get to work out all the stuff that they didn't get to do in this reality and at this density. I firmly believe that that's probably an option. But I feel like for people who are very stubborn and who are not willing to really critically think, I mean, this is not about a conspiracy theory. This is about critically thinking. This is about researching both sides. Because I will tell you, I've done my research on both sides. I see what one side, and I hate to even say that there are sides, but we really are put into this position right now where there is a side of people who completely believe what the mainstream news has been saying, what big tech has been, you know, promoting and marketing, what celebrities, what politicians, what leaders and authority figures around the world have been stuffing down our throats and been brainwashing people to believe is the truth. And then there's the option of, like, there's a whole other camp of scientists and doctors and nurses and people who've been on the front line and intuitives and healers and just free citizens of the world who are literally standing on their soapboxes and have been saying, there is something else here. Look over here. So it really, what it comes down to is people feel inconvenienced around really critically thinking, because it's a little easier for some people in the population to potentially agree with what's going on. And unfortunately, sadly, there are people who are working so much that don't even have the option. By the time they get home from work, and I'm not talking, I'm speaking more maybe from the US, because the US is open, right? You know, and there's some people who even have to work from home, who are working, you know, 40 plus hours a week, and maybe don't have the opportunity or the access to going and doing this research. But it's like there is such thing as cognitive dissonance, period. And I have a lot of compassion in my being for people who are so attached to what they've been told this reality is versus actually discovering what reality means to them and what that looks like. And it requires critical thinking. And whoever's in charge here, and we know that they're not very nice beings, has literally hijacked every industry possible in the world to control people's minds to see a certain narrative. And I believe that there are souls like ourselves who are here to bust down and debunk all the lies that they've been saying, to say that there's a whole other way of living here. And I think that there's going to be a lot of souls that wake up, and there's going to be a lot of souls that just won't. And I trust that there is a divine plan in all of this, because just like you said, truth has a certain frequency. I was actually shown that this morning, that I need to post that on my stories today.
Wow. That's
So
hilarious.
you and I are really in sync, sister. We really are. I just
Totally.
It's for some people, I think they find comfort in just sticking their head in the sand. Ignorance is bliss, and just going on with life that way. But it's going to get painful for people, because we are in an ascension right now. We are in a great awakening that's not just for this planet, but for galaxies and universes. And as more light pulsations come into this planet, and the frequency of Mother Earth increases, as our consciousness just continues to expand, you can't stop that process. You can't. So people are very attached to the illusion of what they believe life is, like life it really is for them. And unfortunately, that is either going to be the awakening portal for them, or the one that they're eventually going to have to step away. Their soul is going to have to be contracted elsewhere to evolve and grow in a different environment, because we can't stop what's coming here. We can't stop what's happening. We can't stop the light from pouring in, and for an awakening and consciousness to continue in humanity's evolution. I mean, that cannot be controlled. They're trying to control it, but it cannot be controlled.
It's interesting as you say that, because it's reminding me of what we were hearing from a presidential campaign, which is that nothing can stop what's coming. And it's occurring to me that that was also an inversion, right? Because we've got their agenda, which they believe nothing can stop what's coming. And then those of us that are aware that there's a massive, light infusion that's coming onto the planet, and nothing can stop that. Nothing can stop our ascension. Nothing can stop our awakening. So there is truth, right? And then I guess it's a matter of what reality are you aligning with to see the truth that matches the reality.
Right.
I love that you brought up compassion before, because in a lot of ways I do have compassion. I'm aware that there's a lot of past life stuff that people are working out, and they signed up for whatever they signed up for. I think the biggest thing for me is the people that are fully awake to the agenda and still getting the poke. I say poke now because I noticed they're starting to pick up on max and vax and jab. So now my new word's poke. I used to call it the jib jab, but it's still.
I did too. I called it the jab for a long time.
Yeah. So we'll call it the poke, and I think everyone knows what we mean by that. But like, you're fully awake and you're getting the poke. I had to really understand that, and I should have known better. But when I tuned into the records, there's people that signed up to be experiments in this lifetime. Maybe in another lifetime they were the experimentors, right? And it's not like I wouldn't know that. I've been dealing with past life stuff forever. And yet some part of me was having this dissonance as well, right? Like, I don't understand how fully awake people, and I think they don't even understand. They just found themselves rationalizing it. I have seen, because we've been clearing, myself and the other Akashic record teachers have been clearing a lot of tracking devices and a lot of implants out of people that are convincing people that it's their idea, and manipulating and hijacking their consciousness, right? As you kind of alluded to before. So then I have compassion for that, because they don't even know. They truly think. I think that's the biggest thing. There's a lot of people that are being programmed to believe that they're choosing when they're actually being coerced. Like, literally, if we look at the definition of coercive control, and we look at where this happens in domestic relationships, we are literally in a massive compounded coercive control environment, right? Even people now, like one of my theories is that I was saying about the course of control, and then I was able to have compassion, to realize that there's literally been hundreds of millions, if not more, people's brains have been hijacked by implants, not to mention whatever past life stuff they need to work out. And then of course, the fluoride and the doctor, like whatever other layers are playing out on that, right? And again, what timeline they're choosing. If they truly just chose to be here and exit during this time, then I guess they have to make the choices that facilitate that. But it's so complex. And how do we maintain our spiritual mastery during this? How do we really hold that elevated perspective when there's a part of us that's like, what is happening? Are you kidding me? Like, you're really buying this?
Yeah, I mean, I love that question. I've been sitting with this for months and months, just really getting to the foundational sort of support that I feel is so pertinent for me in my own journey, and also for the clients I work with and the conversations I have with friends and colleagues, because really we have to take care of our nervous systems right now. I actually think that the nervous system and people learning more about how the nervous system operates is actually a really powerful tool and bridge to having people awaken and do their inner work and work through their traumas and their emotions. And for me, doing regular, consistent work on the nervous system and in training it to hold more energy actually increases capacity. And when we have more capacity, we're not operating from survival, we're operating from a more creative place. And the power of that is that it creates more resourcefulness and resiliency in terms of how we are handling the stress and the trauma that the collective is being put through. When you have more energy available, there's more of a discernment that can happen, because now your brain is not just being flooded, and your adrenaline and all of your stress responses and your nervous systems aren't all, operating off out of fight or flight, freeze, faint, fawn. We're able to see things a little bit more, clearly and creatively. And one of the things that has been really important for me is a couple things is, I think sometimes I see on both sides, the mainstream narrative and the alternative narrative, like a lot of people are really operating from a lot of fear and from a lot of like survival energy. And I think we all have our roles. I really, truly do. And that's been something I've been really getting clear on, like, what is my role in all of this? If we have a bridge of from 3D to 5D, where is my role in this, and what is my role for humanity? And I think what's going to happen is so many people are going to start to awaken more and more. They're going to eventually, this whole thing of, well, I'm back to normal, I've got my poke, I'm out in the world. Well, they still haven't dealt with the trauma of what's happened in this year and prior to the pandemic, any trauma that was there, any, emotional work they need to do, mental work, limitations, can do all of that. That eventually people like ourselves are going to need to offer something, down the line, that's going to really help people who are going through a major awakening in their lives. And I really see it as, how can I be a solution for humanity in the next year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years? I don't know what's going to happen. I don't think anybody really does, because we're all making choices every day that determines the timelines that we go down as individuals and of course as a collective. But what I do know for sure is I've gotten really clear on my role. And I think when I got clear on my role, I started to take a little bit more of a step back from being the person who's waking and shaking everybody up around what's happening in the world, because I do have an inner activist. I do. There's no doubt about it. I always have. I've had tons of arguments and conflict with people when I was younger around, eating organic versus not, and like, GMO foods, to alternative health, to the stuff, all the conspiracy theories that have now been proven to be true. They're not theories anymore. They're conspiracies. So I'm well versed in what it feels like to have that activist role of helping people to really see the truth. but I also feel like I've discovered what my role is. I'm here to be a solution moving forward for humanity. And I think that people who are in the activist role need to be, and they need to powerfully own that and continue to do the exceptional work that they're doing and helping people who are still not seeing and connecting the dots to really see what's happening. But I think the spiritual mastery comes from, God, how can I be an instrument of solution to what's happening on the planet? And show me in that what my role is and what I need to be doing every day to be able to successfully fulfill that role that you have for me. Because I've gone in a lot of questioning this year too. My mission's clear, but there's been a lot of moments where I'm like, God, like, what is my role? Like, am I supposed to be talking about this? What's happening? I know all of this stuff and I have for many years. Should I be preaching it all the time? And I've done, a decent amount of, work where I've revealed what's going on and I've shared my opinion. But it was very clear in the last several months, like, you are here as a solution. You need to turn off all of the news. You need to really like kind of incubate yourself at times away from all of the alternative, because I don't even listen to the mainstream anymore. I can't even be bothered with that. And I never really did before either. But, it like, because that hijacks my nervous system. Both do, in differing ways. I go into rage, I go into anger, I go into deep grief when I start to see what's coming down the pipeline. And then I'm like, okay, I get it. I see what's happening. I see what they're trying to roll out here. And I'm going to be a pillar of light. And I know that my role is this. And so that's been really helping me to work on my nervous system in a different way. And it's deeper than self-care. It's like, I can label that, oh, my self-care is really important, but it's deeper than the self-care that I've even been doing before. And even my spiritual practices, it's really, really, really trusting that there's a solution to this that's being revealed to me every day. And I have to be in a space of listening and taking action when I'm asked to do that. Because if I sit and think about all the things in the world, there are days where I'm like, what is the end goal here? Like, God, what's the plan? Like, what's the plan for people like myself who've come down here and are doing this work? Like, what's the plan if this is what they're trying to, just roll out worldwide? Like, is there any hope here? Do we have any authority over what's going to happen? Like, tell me, please. So yeah, one of the big things for me lately, messages is like one foot in front of the other, one step at a time, one day at a time. Like, I'm going to show you what I need you to do today. You do it, or you just sit in the beingness of it and you listen. The next day will be different, and the next day will be different. And that has been extremely helpful for me to not get as triggered and activated and immersed back into this, like, oh my God, this is what's happening in the world. I can't believe it. And it just bringing me further and further down and into a darker rabbit hole of feeling powerless and hopeless, because there are days where I felt like that. Even with all of this work I've done, I'm human at the end of the day. And what's happening is disgusting, evil, and despicable of what they're doing to humanity. And so, yeah, this is what I've been really focusing on actually in the last little while. And it's been very helpful for me.
Mm-hmm. I love that you shared that and the authenticity of that and the realness of that, because there will be some spiritual folks that won't acknowledge that. And I'll just chime in as well, because people might think that I have it all together. And there's times where I'm like, what is this? And like, where is this going? And at what point do we pull the parachute? Like, at what point are we going to be forced to make decisions about, not that I want to get there, but I think most people have had those thoughts. Right? Like, I actually don't care about dying, but I certainly am not going to stay around and be tortured. And I've said to people, if they literally pull up at my house and say, you're either getting on this bus and going to an isolation camp, or you're getting this thing on your shoulder, and I can't manifest a heart attack on the spot, right? Then yeah, under those conditions, I would probably take the jab, but I would also be really reevaluating if and when it gets to that point, is this really a planet that I want to live on? And hopefully, I can be plucked out and, come back in a different time, or, however, spread my consciousness in some capacity, maybe outside of the body. And that's just real talk, right? And I think if
Yeah.
people aren't having those, or acknowledging that they're having those thoughts,
Mm-hmm.
but then I sink back into the work, as you mentioned, and it sounds like that's part of the solution, because we're also going to talk about, like, how do we navigate the rest of this year, right? And I've had to as well. I've had to really pull back from all the deep dives into Freemason hand symbols and all that. Like, I just never expected to know as much as I do about Freemasons
I
and
know.
and pizza parties and hot dog
Oh
parties and, like,
God, I know.
all the rest of it, right? And where did you really get your red shoes and all the things, right? Just disgusting stuff. And but that's helped me a lot to just stay in alignment with my mission, because, as you mentioned, there's a lot of hooks and a lot of purposeful infiltration and counterintelligence, even in our space, that's designed to sound like truth, because it will have two truths in it. And but then there's another part that's meant to hook us and hook us emotionally, to be able to harvest that energy from us, right? And keeping us in fear. And even, actually, I would love to chat about this too, because it's occurred to me over the months that, and you were alluding to this as well, that our space as well has been purposely infiltrated. And many of us know who some of those purposeful infiltrators are. And, we can name names, but probably better to just not do that. People can do their own research and find their own proof for themselves. But some pretty significant names in our industry. And then it makes me wonder, like, where have I been channeling false light that I wouldn't have even known it? It started to occur to me that unity consciousness was actually what they're creating. They just found a nice way to spin it, just like they're really promoting minimalism right now on Netflix, because they're trying to hijack our mind to think you won't own anything and you'll be happier. Right. So if we start introducing you to the lifestyle of what it really looks like to be freed of your possessions,
predictive
and
programming,
have you think it's your idea, right? And unity consciousness, I mean, the whole point of this jab, poke, whatever I'm trying to say, I'm still getting used to that, is to unify the mind, right? So we're all puppeted, we're all one hive mind. Well, isn't that what unity consciousness is? But when we put the light and love spin on it, then it sounds like it's a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
And I think ideologically, it's great, but also knowing how they've infiltrated our space, have we also bought into this concept of unity consciousness, when in fact, that's actually not what we're meant to be moving towards? I don't even know anymore, right? These are just questions that I have.
I think that they're very valid. And I'm been in the same boat as you around really, like, looking at the pristineness and the quality of energy and the channel, especially for me as a trance channel. Like, that has always been something that has been very important and fundamentally crucial for me, because when you trance channel, it's a whole other different, you get this, it's a whole other different ball game, with energy and with beings. And I hear you. I mean, it's like every industry's been hijacked, including new age spirituality, which is something that I honestly I haven't been as immersed in for a while. A lot of the principles and the things I teach are not really even founded on that. And I feel like we all have to come to the truth. Again, the truth having a certain frequency in our own way and time. But I think it's important for people like ourselves to be in this inquiry right now of, like, I mean, I was even thinking, do I need to remove these paintings that are in here that I've had blessed by Tibetan monks? Is this bringing any energy through? I was talking with a friend the other day, and we were talking about maybe going through all of my, because this is my office and also my kind of altar and spiritual area, sitting through and actually starting to get clearer through my dowsing techniques. Like, is there anything that needs to go in here that is of a old vibration, or that's not actually as pristine and centered around and aligned to God, to source, to Christ energy in here? Because that is who I speak with and I pray to. Is there any energies or any beings that have been advisors that I've been working with, including the Palladians? Is it necessary in my work moving forward to continue to channel them and to do that? So I'm in the same inquiry as you. And I think it's very important that all of us who have been indoctrinated into a different form of spirituality outside of, let's say, Christianity, if we're not religious, right? We need to sort of sit and think, is this pristine? Is this energy? Am I really channeling God? Am I really channeling Christ energy through? Or am I, because we know that the dark has hijacked the light and made it sound like it's the light, when it's not. I mean, it's psychologically, just really fucks with you in that sense. Pardon my French, but it really does. And so I've had these conversations a lot with myself in the last several years, especially when I started to do the trans channeling work, because before I wasn't doing trans channeling work, it was just like straight up higher self channeling, and intuitive stuff that was coming through. And I still do that, but I had to really sit in this whole, conversation around the trans channeling work. And if it was, pristine, and if it's, if it's helpful, make sure that the energies I'm working with and who I'm being trained by and who I'm working with and the things that I'm bringing through are clear. I mean, that's been one of the most important things for me, because that energy is very polarizing for a lot of people. It's like a tuning fork, but I want to make sure it's a tuning fork that's in the right direction and not the one that's in the wrong. So I love that you're having this kind of inquiry and questioning within yourself too. I think it's important for us at this time, because we want to make sure that we are as clear and pristine and impeccable with the true light of God and the true divine plan, not this one that's been inverted and is of the false light, because there's a lot of false light, and there are a lot of big spiritual teachers. And like you said, let's not name names. You can go and research it, that are absolutely bringing through false light and are not here
and
doing
and
good.
purposely. Yeah, there's some that will do it unintentionally, but there's some that
Yes.
have always been here to infiltrate.
Yeah.
And yeah, and I think that's and that did, and for those people that have been watching the show for a while or listening into the podcast, know that I get quite indignant about that. I get very offended that our space, because we work so hard to walk people home, right? And return people to the truth of who they are. So I take I'm offended by it all, in the way that, I mean, like a bigger offense, right? I don't stew in it, but I just find it all, it's fascinating from truly an objective perspective. And then it's also like, and then on top of that, I think those of us that are intuitive, we get a little offended when people try to insult our intuition and tell us that things aren't happening. We're like, didn't you get the memo? Like, I can read through this. But yeah, I definitely get offended by the infiltration in our space, because it's almost like we have to work harder, because then when there's enough charlatans, then we have to work harder to try and transmute that energy. And also, I mean, I can say that the ones that a lot of people resonate with, I never did. And I don't mean that as I'm wonderful. I just mean that I've learned that people that are really involved in the inversion and the two truths and a lie, there's always this, that's a great message, but I always have a but feeling. There's a hollowness to them. And there's also a perplexity, like, how are they getting so many followers? They're either not saying anything new, or they're clearly a hot mess and they're always posting about how they're a hot mess. Or when they speak, they really sound like they're literally just robotic, like they're just reading off a script, and there's no real depth and embodiment, I guess you could say, right? I'm just giving some people hints in case you want to look at some folks. But when I've discovered that they were, then I realized, okay, well, yeah, I couldn't have resonated with them because they weren't operating in the light. And the record keepers, at least for me, are very good at keeping my field pristine and keeping things out that are out of integrity. And it's not to say that people that follow them aren't, it's to say that there's something in them that's attracting them as messengers that they want to take a look at. Again, I don't mean there's something wrong with them, but just that there might be some hero worship or some guru-itis or something that that they need to go clear up. I read something the other day and I thought it was really interesting, just thinking of medical stuff, right? Because we've somehow medicalized everything, and science has now kind of become this new religion. People just go, science, science, science. It's like, oh, I know everyone else in the world lies, but scientists are always truthful, and you should always trust them. And you were told to trust Catholic priests, and yet you also know that, like, It's just so interesting to me. But anyways, I read this thing the other day and it said something about trust the doctor. And doctor, by definition, means to alter. And altar is what you place a sacrifice on.
Hmm.
And it really hit me because when I realized last year that even the snake and whatever else is on the medical symbols, right? And all the inversion and the fact that they're taking an oath to do no harm, but that's an inversion. And there's a lot of doctors that really believe that they're doing right. I genuinely believe they're good humans and they truly believe they're doing what's right because their programming has said this is how you deal with a human body when X happens. And yet there's so many other doctors that have acknowledged like it was painful. I had to walk through the cognitive dissonance. I spent 10 years of my life training to be a surgeon.
Yeah.
And I've now come to understand that my profession is full of shit in a lot of ways.
Uh-huh.
Okay? Not all of it, of course. And there, if anyone's listening that's in the medical profession, you wouldn't be here if you weren't awake. So I know you're awake and I'm not knocking you because I know you're doing good things for your patients and you genuinely care and you probably are feeling like, holy cow, what just happened here, right? But to even just break down the languaging of that, right? And looking at what those words really mean and the fact that that really is what's playing out. And how any history that's or any civilization that's devolved, we look at the Holocaust, we look at the Rwandan genocide, we look at other things, it's always started with turning people into biohazards that are dirty and disgusting that we can't be around, that then initiates this snowball effect of all kinds of other things rolling in. And we're seeing that now, right? Like,
Yes.
I joke sometimes, and I posted on Facebook once, good morning, biohazards. Who are you managing to gross out today by taking up space on the planet? And of course, I lost a few friends. Oh, but it's so astounding to me. Like people were breathing and coughing and snorting on each other up until the end of 2019. And then all of a sudden it's the worst thing to even remotely.
Yeah.
It's just, it's astounding to me. So how else can we maintain pristine clarity in the channel so that we can be aware of what's going on in the world and be in the world because we chose to be here, but also not be really thrown off kilter by what's happening?
Yeah, I mean, this time really calls for a real deep devotion to listening. I feel like listening to what the guidance within you is telling you and making sure that you keep your energy pristine and clear, that you're calling it. I mean, for me, in my opinion, it's like working with God, source energy, Christ energy, the I am presence, filtering things through that. I think it's also taking enough time out for yourself right now. I think a lot of us who are in this work want to spring into action and be in service. But when we're too much in service and we're not enough in service to ourselves, it's easy to get to a place where we're under-resourced. And right now we need resourced humans who have enough resiliency and have enough energy in their nervous systems to continue to download the new world paradigm that we are here creating. And I believe that there's a lot of us, especially those who are listening to this show, that are here to be the builders of the new world in the most loving, most pristine way possible. But that doesn't come from consistently tanking your nervous system and being consistently in stress and being under-resourced. So, I don't have all the answers of what's going to happen, for the rest of this year. But what I do know for sure is that the more that we are connected to ourselves and we're connected to that higher aspect of ourselves, the more guided and the more taken care of we're going to be and supported in this process. And I think it's super important that, because I don't know about you, Jennifer, but I meet a lot of people on this path who are really like the lone wolf, let's say, in their family at this point, that don't have, a circle or an inner circle of people or family members or friends that share these same belief systems. They're very indoctrinated in what's happening. And I've heard countless times over the last week from several people that I know where they're not allowed to even go visit family or go on family vacations this summer because they haven't been poked, or they're not willing to wear a mask, or they're not willing to abide by some sort of rule or agreement that the rest of the family's made where they're all on the same page. And it's crucial, I think, at this point that we find human beings and connect in person as much as possible. We cannot lose our humanity. We cannot turn all of our connections to these virtual, behind the screens, living inside of our houses, that being the only form of connection. Like, we need to be around other like-minded, soul-minded people who are really on the same page, because that also helps us to carry through this enormously challenging time that we're going through. It's beautiful, yes, but it's also incredibly challenging. So it's important to be in community, to be in connection with people who understand the world as you're seeing, because it can feel very lonely if you don't, and you can feel crazy. And I think that's why a lot of people are giving in. They're just giving in. It's like, stand true in your convictions right now, because the truth is, the more resourced you are, the more you have access to the truth within you. There's just more energy that's able to move. Higher frequency energy is able to move through you. And the last piece is like, do the work, continue doing your work, continue to like move through the trauma of the last 15 months and prior to that, continue doing your emotional work and doing the deprogramming work. Like, continue to excavate and get closer and closer to your most authentic version of yourself, because in that, you'll also know what is next for you. It's not something that I can tell you. You can tell the person. Like, it's something we want to empower the people that resonate with us and our messages to discover within themselves. But that comes from a true devotion to evolution and growth within themselves, and for crying out loud, shut your phones off and shut your Wi-Fi off, and, like, unplug from your screens, get outside into nature. Stick your feet in the grass, go to the lake or the ocean, swim in a pond, like, get connected to nature again, because what they're doing is they're trying to get us away from nature. They're trying to get us away from, the way the natural aspect of Mother Earth. And they're turning people into part human, part technology, whether it's through saying we need to be at home and virtually connect versus actually be out in the world. Like, we have that. We need to go back to our roots as human beings, to the natural state of why we were created and how we were created. We've got to return back to that, because in that, we get reconnected to the most a primal part of ourselves that wasn't indoctrinated with all of this either. It's there, it's still within us. And that's where our soul connects. That's where God communicates with us, through a clearer place. So it's important to like, I just really want to have people give themselves permission to, like, this is the year of not just taking care of yourself, like, take extra good care of yourself. Like, really give that permission to yourself to be nurtured and nourished and held and supported and just loved up on in the most impeccable way possible by people who really care about you. And I know that those that are listening, they are awake, they get what's going on, but it's very easy to feel alone, especially when so many people in the world are just caving left, right, and center, and just doing it because they think that freedom's on the other side of that. There's no such thing as freedom that's found outside of you. It's found from within. Nobody can give you freedom. Only you can give freedom to yourself. So.
Yeah. And I love that you shared that. And I don't know what your thoughts are on this, because it could just be a psyop, and it kind of in some ways feels like it is. But one of the main reasons why awake people have been getting the poke is because they want to travel.
Right.
And
yes.
now the airlines have said that we don't know if you can travel because, this poke creates blood clots, and flying is not for people that are prone to blood clots. So we don't know if we can allow you to fly. And I've noticed they've really started to amp up the conversation about spike proteins and things like that. And I wonder if this is the ultimate inversion, where the people that are hijacked for being do-gooders and rule followers and stuff are actually the ones that are going to inevitably in the next 6 months be treated like biohazards. And so here they went out thinking that it was going to give them freedom. And then if anything, they're going to be the ones that are isolated from society because they've had it. And I know some businesses, at least in Canada, I can't really speak to the States, although I do feel like I saw some stuff in the States at least, where some companies are saying if you've been poked, you can't come in. Like certain gyms have said that in certain other places because of the risk, and the insurance companies can't insure the business owners because they don't know what the long-term effect is, right? So I do wonder if, there's people that are running out because they don't want to be treated like a biohazard. They want to fit in, they want to be included, and they're having friends say, we don't know if we can socialize with you anymore. We don't know if you can see your grandkids. Or sorry, yeah, we don't know if you can see your grandkids if you haven't done it. There's all kinds of like total coercive control. They're just literally playing out what's already being modeled, right? And but I thought, oh, I wonder if this is because we know that AI can't duplicate free thinking and it can't duplicate imagination and intuition, right? And those of us that are choosing not to do it are actually way more valuable to them because they can't duplicate the contribution we can be to their agenda. But a mind that's easily hijacked is presumed to be easily controlled, and then, they serve a different function. I hate to say that, but I mean, that's something that occurred to me last week when I saw that stuff about the airlines, and I certainly hope that's not the case.
Right.
But it would really suck for people that have run out to get it, only to find out that they're the ones that are being, I mean, we already know, you and I are choosing not to get it, but for people that already know, but still chose to get it, thinking there was freedom on the other side, they might find that those are the folks, and I certainly hope this isn't the case, that are the ones getting carted off to centers because they're now considered a high risk to society.
Right. I mean, the coming days are going to be big revelations is what I really see happening the remainder of this year. And I've been told that it feels like something's coming in the next, it's kind of already here, actually, even with what was revealed today with Anthony Fauci's emails being leaked. But I think we're going to start seeing some big truths coming out over the next month or so. It's just kind of what I've been feeling. And then something in the fall feels like it's going to happen again. I don't know what. I'm not being shown specifically. I am literally in this space of I can't plan even a week out sometimes. I'm literally week by week. It's like I'm planning the most basic of things from sessions with clients and whatnot. It's literally, we are being forced to be so present right now, but I've had similar thoughts as you too around things like what's the play here? It's like a chess game. That's what we're living in.
Totally.
It's a chess game, it's one side makes a move than the other, and you don't know what the strategy is, and we think we got to figure it out, and sometimes we don't. But I mean, I really resonate, and I've said this for a long time, truth has a different frequency than lies. And the truth always comes out, always, no matter if it's 50 years from now, 5 minutes from now, or next week, or 10 months from now. The truth will always come out, and it's always going to weigh stronger than fiction, and then lies and manipulation and deceit. And I think for all of us who've been in this camp, who've really been advocating for the truth, and for the truth to be revealed, stay strong in that. That's what's going to get us through this time of knowing that God wins in this, not the other thing. True light is going to win. That's a
perfect place. Totally. That's a perfect place to leave it at. God wins, the light wins, truth wins. And so when we can hold that truth, then we can live beyond this, right? And stay in the energy of possibility, like what you were talking about. So before we wrap up, how can people stay in touch with you?
Yeah, of course. Well, I'm on social media, so you can find me on Instagram at Vanessa Petronelli. And then you can also find me on Facebook at v.petronelli. You can even search my name and you'll find me, and I'm there. And you can visit my website, vanessapetronelli.com. So there's several ways you can stay in touch. DM me, private message me, let me know how this, episode, this show that Jennifer and I did to get today really impacted you and what you found valuable and helpful. Because that's ultimately what I really hope for, when people listen to this, that they walk away with something really valuable and tangible that they can implement.
Yeah. Thank you for that. And for everyone listening, we're going to have all of that information in the show notes. If you're driving right now and listening to this, or you're, not close to pen and paper, we're going to have that available for you. So Vanessa, thank you so much for who you be and for sharing your time and your wisdom with us today. And thanks to all of you for being with us. We really appreciate you and looking forward to hearing what you receive from today's show. So we'll see you again next time.